Today, discover the secrets of high-tech luggage. How can suitcases withstand even more intense wear and tear? Thanks to science, you'll find out how to optimize packing your suitcase. 3 million French people suffer from motion sickness. Feared by all families when traveling by car, why does it particularly affect children in the back? And what are some tips to avoid it? Many people suffer from a phobia of traveling on planes and even on trains. You'll see that it's possible to fight this phenomenon. 15,000 trains run every day at ever faster speeds. They cross paths only seconds apart without colliding. To understand all this, Lesggy takes an unprecedented trip in the cabin of a TGV train. Finally, you'll discover how air traffic controllers help planes take off and land without ever crossing each other. Holiday time's arrived. It's time to pack your bags. The good old-fashioned trunk of our ancestors, heavy and cumbersome, would be a nightmare today. In the 21st century, we can travel light, thanks to scientists who work hard to create ever lighter and more durable suitcases. So what are the secrets of today's luggage? What are some tips to organize your suitcase? What will the luggage of the future look like?
Pack your bags.
Going on a family trip can be an adventure.
Should we put that in the suitcase?
To be able to carry all the travel essentials, we have to find clever solutions. Once the suitcase is finally shut, you still have to carry it around, which isn't much fun. Yet luggage has evolved a lot, making life easier for globetrotters. We head to Belgium, where a major luggage brand has agreed to show us its archives. Here, you'll understand the incredible evolution of our suitcases.
This trunk, dating back to 1910, was relatively bulky and heavy because at the time, there were people who helped travelers carry our luggage. There was more room in trains. There weren't really any constraints. In the 70s, we put wheels on luggage for the first time. In the 2000s, we launched the four-wheel suitcase that is very light and resistant.
Take a look. We weighed 3 empty suitcases. The trunk from 1910, a suitcase from the early 2000s and the latest model. You'll see that the difference is incredible. The trunk is more than 20 kilos, almost the weight for a check-in bag on airplanes. The second weighs 6 kilos and the third, for the same volume, only 3. In 1 century, the weight of the suitcase has been cut by 6, and in a decade by 2. And yet these 2 suitcases are made of the same material, polypropylene, a derivative of plastic. So what's the secret of the latest generation suitcase? We head to the factory, the last one in Europe that still manufactures luggage.
Polypropylene is plastic pellets like these that we melt then stretch out into thin strips between 10 to 15 times to strengthen their resistance.
Polypropylene therefore has an amazing property. The more it's stretched, the more resistant it becomes, and this is happening at the molecular level. Initially, the molecules of polypropylene are organized in a spaghetti form. They're distended and disorganized. When the polypropylene is stretched, the molecules unroll and line up next to one another to form solid fibers. And that's not all.
As you see, the lengthwise polypropylene strips are extremely strong. However, if I want to separate them, it's still possible. So to avoid this, we will weave them together and create this ultra-resistant armor that remains flexible.
Woven polypropylene is very strong and thin, and therefore lighter. It will then be combined with conventional polypropylene. This composite material, called curve, is very sturdy. To verify this, we head to the torture chamber. Here, the luggage rolls, falls, is quartered, dented and exhausted. It goes through everything. So let's start with the first test. On the left are curve squares. On the right are squares of normal polypropylene. They don't know it yet, but they'll be impaled to find out which one is the most resistant. And the results are clear.
So here on the normal polypropylene, we will need to apply a force of 110 kilograms at a specific point to penetrate it. While on the woven polypropylene, we will need to apply 250 kilograms to penetrate it.
Let's move on to the design of this high-tech suitcase. Designers have given it grooves, and they're not just good-looking.
Here you see an aluminium mold that will shape our suitcases. These design lines will act like beams that will give structure to the suitcase and therefore much more resistance.
Clearly, these ridges will make the suitcase sturdier while distributing the force upon impact. The proof is in these images. Look, it's amazing. This suitcase was thrown from a height of more than 10 meters, and upon landing, there's not a scratch. We saw that our suitcases are well protected on the outside. Let's focus now on the inside. Making sure we pack everything we need is often a nightmare. And yes, even organizing a suitcase is a science. We visit a major French luggage brand. Stéphane Piot will reveal some tips for your 15 kilos of travel essentials. This is the average amount in your suitcase.
The most important thing to know is that you have to put heavy items more at the bottom of the suitcase and on the side of the wheels. Why? Well, because when you arrive at the hotel or in your room and you put the suitcase on the bed, you will lift the top cover.
Putting heavy things at the back, like shoes for example, also helps to balance the suitcase. Too much weight at the top could tip it over, especially when it only has 2 wheels.
And the heaviest things must be on the side of the wheels, because when you move in this direction, if the heaviest things are above, they will crush what is below. So here we'll be fine. They are at the bottom, so there's no problem.
Now let's optimize the space inside.
With shoes, there is a lot of empty, unused space inside them. So we will fill them with socks. It's a win-win situation. Not only do we use the empty space, but another benefit is that the shoes will not get crushed during travel.
As for the trousers, you'll see that it's possible to gain some precious centimeters.
We will unfold them, we will lay them out as long as possible to use the maximum space at the top and bottom of the suitcase. And we will lay them inversely top to bottom.
Top with bottom, why?
This way, we will not have the thickness caused by trouser waistlines when packed one on top of the other.
Before folding, put other clothes inside it, and you're done.
By doing this, we will create a wide enough gap that does not stress the fabric and avoid wrinkles.
A well-packed suitcase still has a lot of small, empty spaces. How can we fill them? Here's how.
We fold t-shirts Maki style as inspired by Japanese cuisine. So we roll them up, we squeeze out as much air as possible, and thanks to these Makis, we will be able to fill the spaces, for example here between the shoes.
Stéphane even has a solution for your favorite pillow.
We have objects like this one that is super convenient, but is very bulky because there is a lot of air in the fibers.
The solution: a pillow equipped with a non-return valve that allows you to expel air from it. First, we roll it to expel the air from the cushion. Thanks to the valve, the air doesn't re-enter the pillow.
Your cushion that was super soft and comfortable, but took up a lot of space, has now become a pancake. 80% of volume gained.
Now that preparing your suitcase has become child's play, let's see what the future holds for us. Back to Belgium to find out what will be the luggage of the future.
The smart suitcase is the suitcase of the future. It will be traceable by GPS, as you will have here a small GPS which will ensure that you'll never lose your suitcase. You'll always know where it is.
This is a prototype. The marketed model will have a screen that will display your destination via barcodes. As a result, you can board without lining up. While waiting for these astonishing innovations, pack your bags efficiently and travel in comfort. When it's time to go on a long vacation, many of you travel by car or train. But for some, this trip can be problematic. In France, motion sickness affects more than 3 million people.
When I get in the car, I feel a little sick.
What causes this famous motion sickness? How can we avoid it? We'll find out. And did you know that some people have a panic attack from traveling? On every road trip, it's the same problem for Arnaud's family.
Children are always sick when you're driving. As soon as you hit the road, whether it's on a winding or a straight road.
I feel like throwing up.
My head hurts and I feel sick.
To find out more, we meet Dr. Michel Toupet, a specialist in motion sickness.
Motion sickness means feeling sick while moving. It has many variations, including seasickness.
Seasickness, car sickness. You can even get sick on a carousel. Where does it come from exactly?
What causes it? There are sensors deep in the inner ear that measure our movements and compare these movements to what the eyes see and what the body feels.
Let's observe more closely this extraordinary organ, the inner ear.
Here's an ear. We have the inner ear, which contains a shell that measures hearing and balance. And you can see that there are channels that measure in 3 dimensions. Everything that turns, everything that moves. And in the middle are the sensors that measure all of the linear movements, the braking, the acceleration, and the force of weightlessness.
Take the example of the car driver. The inner ear senses all the car's movements, and this information is consistent with what our driver sees as he watches the road and its movement. He's never sick. But let's take the example of a little boy who only sees the front seat. His inner ear captures the movements of the car, but not his eyes, which see something fixed. There's therefore a conflict between the two sources of information. This causes motion sickness with its characteristic nausea. Can we avoid motion sickness? We ask Dr. Toupet to meet our little family.
Doctor, what do you advise to tackle motion sickness in children?
Well, it's better not to read. It's better to look in front of you because often reading makes you sick.
Of course, rule number 1 is to look at the road in order to avoid the famous disparity between what we see and the inner ear. And for that, there are simple rules to observe.
How we're positioned is very important. Camille is more grown up. She's in the middle. She will be more comfortable if she's propped up a bit more in the middle so she can see the big visual field with the 2 headrests usually placed there. Because if she can't see, she will get sick. Her little brother, who's smaller, will be more sensitive to everything that moves. He should use a booster seat so he can also see.
With a small window at the back like this, or a backrest with a big headrest, no wonder your child gets sick. Even if the booster seat is no longer necessary, it's still better to keep it for the child to see the outside and the road. This will greatly improve your road trips. And for people who are most sensitive to motion sickness, Dr. Toupet has a treatment.
We can't cure them, but we can train them to be more resistant to it.
Let's demonstrate with Camille, our little guinea pig. Placed on this unstable plate and plunged into darkness with the whirling lights from this disco ball, she'll have to keep her balance. It's an exercise that will train her inner ear.
I kind of lost my bearings. I didn't really understand what was happening with all the lights, and my feet moved a lot.
Destabilizing, right? That's the point. By training the brain regularly, the patient learns to better manage the disparity between his vision and his inner ear. There are also medications for motion sickness to take before traveling. They act directly on the chemical messengers of the brain. They're reserved, of course, for people who are traveling. If traveling can make people sick, 2% of the population are afraid of it. You probably know of phobics taking aeroplanes, but did you know that there are also phobics for train travel? This was the case for Stéphane a few months ago. We met him at his psychologist's office.
I could not take the train anymore. At times, I would get a ticket, go to the station, board the train, and before it departed, I would leave the train in a very sorry state. On my hands and knees on the platform, exhausted by the efforts I had just made. I felt disheartened and ashamed that I couldn't take the train in the end.
Impressive, but what exactly is he afraid of?
The fear, which is really panic, is a fear of dying, of not breathing, of going crazy, of losing control of myself completely. And it becomes unbearable.
To overcome this paralyzing fear, he's been doing relaxation sessions for more than 2 years.
We relax the patient so that they can confront the phobic situation in their imagination. At that moment, they realize that they alone possess the resources and power to relax, while facing the object of their fears, which in this case is the train.
In other words, relaxation allows the patient, once relaxed, to imagine that he's taking the train. His stress is mitigated by the quiet environment of the office. And after several months, Stéphane takes the train regularly and can use all public transport.
Thanks to this, I can enjoy traveling to different destinations.
He goes back home using the subway. If you're a phobic of transportation, don't hesitate to consult an expert. There are solutions. And in case of motion sickness, remember to look at the road from the car or the horizon from the boat. Then you'll have a carefree holiday. The train is still the preferred means of transport for the French. When all's well, 15,000 trains run daily in France with 4 million people on board. How is it that they don't collide? And 9 times out of 10 arrive on time? Lesggy investigates. There's also a lot going on in the sky. In Roissy alone, there are 1,300 takeoffs and landings per day. How do all these planes take off and land safely? We're in the basement of the Gare de l'Est train station in front of one of the largest model train sets in France. Like in our real rail network, the trains follow each other and cross paths without any incident. This intrigues Antoine.
How is it possible that so many trains can run at the same time without ever colliding?
This is the principle of what is called an optical control board. We don't need to watch the trains, it's just like a signal box.
Control screens, traffic lights. Everything works here like in real life. How is it possible to ensure such security with dozens of trains running at the same time? To find out, Lesggy goes to the Montparnasse train station in Paris.
Hello, Mac.
Here we find the huge board that shows the trains departing and arriving at Montparnasse station. And if 800 trains a day pass through here without a problem, it's thanks to a very ingenious system.
Our entire network has been divided into cantons.
What are cantons?
They actually allow us to space out the trains by distance. That is to say, ensure that when a train is present in a canton, no other train can enter this canton.
A canton is therefore a section of the track that's about 1 kilometer long, marked by a traffic light at the entrance and the exit. When the train arrives at the canton, the traffic light turns red to indicate to the next train that it's busy. When the train has cleared the track, the light turns green again. If the driver strictly observes the signals, there can never be 2 trains in the same place at the same time.
How do we know if there's a train somewhere or not?
Well, in fact, we have a residual current in the 2 rails.
Yes.
And therefore the axle is conductive. Each time an axle is found on the 2 rails, this creates a short circuit where the switchboard shows that a train is present.
And the position of the trains is instantly displayed on the board in the control room.
Here we know we have a train.
Because the light has turned red, right?
The light has turned red. Here we know that the track is free because the light is white.
So in fact, the conductor must above all obey the signals he sees.
Exactly.
I'd like to see how it works.
That's right, Mac. You have a train to catch.
Let's not waste too much time because the train's leaving soon.
Thank you. Hello.
Let's see how it works in reality.
It's so tiny. And so, if I understand correctly, we wait until the signal turns green, as it indicates that the track in front of us is free, so we can go on.
Exactly, yes. The train conductor must absolutely abide by the signals and immediately react to the signals that he sees.
Which requires a lot of concentration.
Be careful and pay attention. The light turns green. This means that the track is free. The train can leave.
So here he's just received the authorization to depart from the train controller.
Okay, and here's another green light, which shows us that we're back in the canton.
Another section that's free as we have no train in front of us.
After a few minutes, our train reaches its cruising speed of 300 kilometers per hour. The TGV is at a brisk pace when it encounters a signal telling it to slow down.
We're catching up with another train here.
Okay.
The signal we see is a yellow light, which is a warning. The conductor must stop at the next signal.
OK, and what controls the brakes when the signal tells him to stop?
If he's not travelling at the right speed, the train will stop automatically.
The safety distance between the two trains is again observed. The next canton is free, so the signal turns green again.
It can resume its speed of 200 kilometers per hour again. The route is clear.
Our TGV will arrive on time at Le Mans station. But who plans this chain of hundreds of train carriages that leave and arrive on time, avoiding congestion on the tracks? Well, everything happens here, in one of the station's nerve centres, the control centre. Down to the minute, all the trains have been planned a year in advance, including all major departure days. It's also here, when there is a delay or a cancelled train, that one recalculates the schedule to get it back to normal. And in case of an anomaly, we prefer to rely on human judgment rather than a machine.
If a train breaks down and is stopped in the area, the lights would stay red. Nothing would happen without human intervention. We try to avoid relying completely on technology so that people can intervene to fix the various malfunctions that could arise.
That's why 9 out of 10 trains arrive on time, and that the train is the safest form of ground transportation in France. You'll see that it's the same situation in the sky. Every day in France, 5,200 planes take off without ever crossing paths. It's the air traffic controller's job to make sure that there's only one plane in a section of sky and not two. We're at Roissy, in the north of Paris, where they handle 1,300 aircraft movements per day.
Hello, Air France 1780, behind is 318. Line up with 26 to the right.
Aircraft are accompanied by a succession of several control centres.
At every moment of a flight, the aircraft is in constant contact with air traffic control. During its cruising stage is the contact with one of the 5 regional centres of air navigation that are located across France. Then it is in contact with the approach rooms. Then, when it is really close to the airport, it is in contact with a control tower which oversees a 10-kilometre radius around the tower.
And don't think that pilots are flying their planes by eye. Even in the sky, they follow very specific routes that have been tracked by the air traffic controllers. Each plane has its specific route.
There is a whole network of routes composed of beacons operated by either radio navigation or satellite. Thanks to their onboard equipment, planes are able to follow these route networks. And, in fact, everywhere in the sky, there are what we call airways or aerial highways for aircraft. Then there's a whole network of published trajectories near airports like Roissy, which pilots follow to approach the airport.
We're in the approach room of Roissy. It's here where the departures and arrivals of aeroplanes within a 100-kilometre radius of the airport are managed.
It's important that an aircraft is in constant contact with an air traffic controller for safety reasons, as the pilots do not have a global overview of the air traffic.
And this overview, here it is on this control screen. Look closely at this picture. It's incredible. It represents 20 minutes of aircraft arrivals on Roissy's 2 runways. We can determine the position of the aircraft using conventional ground radar. And for more accurate data, such as the flight number, it's the aircraft itself that transmits this data. How then do you give the order to land or take off to so many planes at a time?
The air traffic controller will, of course, give them instructions, like the altitude and speed, in order to ensure that the planes are exactly where they need to be. In the end, we regulate this by the radar on the axis.
This axis is that of the runway. Thanks to the information given by the controller, the pilot will be able to reach the airstrip in due time, under the controller's orders, with a minimum safety distance of 5 to 6 kilometers between each aircraft, or 95 seconds for standard aircraft in the landing phase.
The idea is simply to ensure that the aircraft in front has enough time to land and clear the runway before the next one lands.
Powerful computer tools therefore help air traffic controllers in their tasks. But in the event of hazardous weather or mechanical problems, it's they and they alone who manage the traffic.
We can react very quickly to any situation. Whether it's a problem reported by a pilot, a mechanical problem, or a concern with a passenger on board, a passenger who's fallen ill, for example. We are able to quickly rearrange our landing schedule to give priority to these planes.
They're a little like the pilot's right hand and the guardian angel of every traveller.